We found that if we lower the stakes and lower the heat, we actually get better results.
Hey CBMers, welcome back to College by Mentor, where we help you survive the college application process and beyond. We're your co-hosts, Lisa,
Abby,
and Stephanie.
And on today's episode, we're going to chat with Susan Knoppow about what most students dread and we love, the essays. Susan is the CEO and co-founder of WOW Writing Workshop, where she created the WOW method, a simple 10-step process for writing college essays. A former executive speechwriter and copywriter, Susan is also a published poet and essayist. She holds a BA in psychology from the University of Michigan, Abby's alma mater, and a master's of fine arts in writing from Vermont College. When she's not running WOW, Susan likes to garden, cook, and go on adventures with her husband and their dog Luna. She has 3 adult children. We just found out one just graduated from college, the youngest, who are all talented writers as well. So welcome, Susan. We're so happy to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah. So Susan, we have been, well, as I said before, this is actually our favorite time, even though it's a busy time, because we really love the essay part of the process because we really get to know our students well. We help them understand themselves and understand what drives them, their themes, etc. But for a lot of people, this is a really challenging time. And I've always, we've all been listening to your ICA chats. I call them like your fireside chats, right, for several years. And I always love how grounded you are in your approach to essay writing. So I'd love to just hear how you got into this business and why did you see such a need?
Oh, well, thanks for asking. So I have been a writer and a writing teacher for many, many, many years. And back in 2009, when my partner Kim and I founded WOW, she retired in December, but we started this together. And it has been less than a year since she's been off. So I feel like it's still us together here. We created this together. Why did we do this? Because when you're a writer, people ask you to look at their writing. Can you look at my application for the summer program? Can you read my personal statement? I'm applying to business school. Can you read my essay? So Kim, who's a journalist by training, and me, I'm an instructional designer, a teacher. She said, could you make a class about this? You teach writing. And I said, yeah, we can make a class about this. And so we did. And really, that was the beginning. It was just, can you do it? Sure, let's try it. I took the principles I've learned as a writing teacher and as a writer. Kim learned everything she could possibly learn about applications, admissions, college essays as a journalist. We put all that together and we started to see really great success. And for us, success meant the students were calm. They weren't freaking out. They were finishing their essays. They were understanding what they were doing. And we had heard that that was not the case, that essays were made you crazy and it was horrible and how hard it was. But once we understood the task, we were able to teach students. And then a couple of years later, I was actually at an IECA conference. I did a session with a colleague and people came up to us and said, that was great. What else do you have? And I said, I'm going to do a webinar series this summer. I remember telling Kim and saying, there's this new thing called GoToWebinar. This is like 2012. I'm going to learn how to use it. And next month I'm doing a webinar. Let's see what, and we did. And that started really a lot of our work now. Most of our work, almost, I would say more than half, is with our colleagues. We train independent consultants. We train school counselors, even people who are essay specialists, people who've been in admissions, who've been in schools. We teach them a method. And so that's really where we feel like our strength is. I don't need to work with every student in the world. I want to teach others so they can work with students as well.
Yeah, that's so smart because then you're able to essentially put out your effort, your philosophy into many more hands. And so just like walk us through, like what's the guiding philosophy behind the WOW approach and how does it work? What's the WOW process?
Okay, so we have 10 steps, and we've always had the same 10 steps. We've tweaked things a little bit here and there. The first step is the one that most people skip. We feel like this is our magic. So what we teach, like I said, is an approach. We believe that given the right tools, students can make editorial decisions. Our job is to teach them how to make those decisions. So not tell them what to do, not tell them what to write or what sentence to change, but to make observations and to give them a framework for making smart choices. And we will weigh in if we think they're not making smart choices. We certainly will tell them. But ultimately, the essay belongs to them. we use the Common App personal statement as our teaching essay. We teach them that approach, and then they can apply it to other essays and writing that they do. So we begin, our step one is to understand the prompt. And by understanding the prompt, I don't mean like just read the questions and understand those sentences. We mean, why are you writing application essays? How do they fit into an application? Who's reading them? What else do they already know about you? I mean, it may seem basic, but students don't understand. And so every step, when we work with students, and we also use this for training our colleagues, we have an online system platform. Every step has a brief video, it has a page to read, and a writing exercise. And the writing exercise for that first step is the one that gives our coaches so much information because it's basic. It says, what's the Common App essay for? And if a student says it's to show how unique I am and to make me stand out, we stop and we make sure that they understand that actually you read the instructions. That doesn't say that. It just says, give us something beyond grades and scores and that'll help us know you better. That's paraphrased. So we want to make sure they understand that before we even start brainstorming ideas. Most students start by brainstorming ideas. Most moms and dads do that. Most English teachers do that. Most counselors do that. It seems logical. Of course, they understand the question. Just read it. They're not that complicated. And we say, no, slow down. Let's make sure. And then our second question, still in step one, is what do they already know about you? And again, it may seem obvious. They know I took the ACT. They know I had this kind of a school. They know that I'm on the track team. And we do that because we want to slow the students down and remind them again, remember, I'm a teacher. I'm thinking like a teacher. I want to make sure they remember that the purpose of the essay is not to show that you won the championship or to show that you're a tennis player. They know that. It's to show them. The next question is, what would you like them to know about you? Oh, I want them to know I'm a really good problem solver. I'm compassionate. I make good decisions. Anything. It doesn't matter. In fact, it's not a test. We're not going to like check later to make sure that they shared these characteristics. Part of what the underpinning of what we do is the distinguishing between characteristics, who you are. Essays are a way to show who you are. The distinguish between characteristics and accomplishments. Applications are full of accomplishments. What did you do? Where did you go? How many times? Yeah, activities, even letters of recommendation are often, they're characteristics, but there's a lot of accomplishments in there as well. So in these 10 steps, step one is to understand the prompt. Step two is to brainstorm ideas. And then we focus on theme. Theme is crucial to our process. It is some combination, whatever kind of essay, of what happened or what are you going to write about and why. Why does it matter? And the why is the characteristics. Or for a supplement, which we can talk more about, the why is, well, why are you going to include these details? Or why are you going to tell this story? Or why do you want to share this anecdote? If we can get students to slow down and really focus on why they have chosen what they've chosen, and it can't be because my coach thought it was a good idea
Or
or my mom thinks it's
right.
the coolest thing about me or whatever.
Right.
If we can balance one of the 6 Common App prompt options, number 7 is okay, but usually we find they don't need it. If they can balance a question, a characteristic, and what we call an anchor story, something that'll hold them in place at least through the first draft. If they have those 3 things in balance, then they're ready to write. So we don't even get to first draft till step 5 because we want to make sure, and we have a writing exercise for every one of these tasks, and our coaches are trained to evaluate what they've done. And then we take them outside of the essay. So this is where our process is really distinct. Instead of taking the first draft and marking it up and going back and forth, we say, okay, we're going to teach you how to think like writers. Stop, put the draft aside. Now I'm going to make some suggestions outside of the essay. Give me more about this. Tell me more about that. And these questions are based on the theme and the first draft. So how well have they executed on this theme? Is there enough? What happened? Is there enough? Why does it matter? It doesn't matter. Even if they've written 900 words for a 650 word essay, we're still going to have them write more because they might not be the right 650 words might not already be on the page. So we take them outside the essay for a couple of different exercises, and then we bring them back in. That draft is a revision. And again, we're trying to teach them to think like writers. So a writer doesn't think of revision as fixing broken things. A writer thinks of revision as trying to find a way to see the essay new. And that's like, how do I turn it upside down? How do I shake it out? And it's hard to do that when you're just reading it. So anyway, we go through like that. And so we focus first on content, then structure, and then finally polish.
Finally polish. And what do you think is the hardest step for most of the kids?
The hardest step for most of the kids, it's going to be one of two things. For anxious kids, it's coming up with 4 ideas before they meet with their coach. Because even though we tell them that we are not choosing from 4 ideas, these are conversation starters, they worry, oh my gosh, I have to have amazing ideas. And we tell them, no, you don't. You need to have something to bring to the conversation, because our coaches can start anywhere. The second thing that's hard for them is step 7, which is their second draft. We ask them to look at everything they've done and plan their next draft. Now, we tell them whatever you do is okay. You can write me 1 sentence. I love my first draft and I'm going to change a second paragraph. You can color code all your notes and you can send me a scan of all of it. But both of those steps require them to trust themselves, not just to respond to something that someone has told them to do. That's where things click. So when they do their, what we call step 2, they bring ideas to their coach and the coach says, these are amazing places to start. Thank you. Now they trust that they know where they're going. When they get to that step 7 and they're supposed to plan their next draft, like I said, we tell them, don't spend too much time on it. Just look at what you've already done. And the coach says, this is amazing. Keep moving. Regardless of what they did, again, it builds trust. And what we have found is kids worry so much about the essay that part of our job is to remind them that they already have everything they need. Our job is to put them in a quiet space, give them the framework, and help them make good editorial decisions.
Yeah, I love all of that. And it never occurs to me to remind the kids to read read the directions on the Common App, and just because that's the thing. Every single student comes to us and says, there's nothing unique about me. There's nothing special about me. How am I going to stand out? And as many different ways as I've tried to figure out how to convince them that that's not what it's about. I like your idea of going back, literally like showing them the instructions on the Common App. It's kind of going back to basics. So it might be difficult to generalize, but what do you think are the key elements to a successful essay in terms both of content and also structure?
I like that question. So the key elements, and so we try to talk to admissions officers when we possibly can. That was Kim used to stop people at conferences like, hey, you're wearing the admissions officer color lanyard. Can I ask you a question? So we ask the same question. I've been asking the same question for more than 15 years, which is, what do you want me to tell my students about the essay? And they say, if they want to stand out, tell them to answer the question. They're trying so hard to impress. So really, what are the main, the key elements is an essay that answers the question, which may sound like a disingenuous answer, but really students, like you said, they have so many preconceptions of what they're supposed to do that they don't really read the question. You take why us essays. Some of them ask about majors. Some of them ask about programs. Some of them want to know about the place where the school is located. But they're different questions. And so teaching a student, when we use the Common App as a teaching essay, I mean this really important. It's really important because then I can give them any prompt and say, before you think about what you're going to write, before we talk about it, I want you to look at this prompt. Let's take it apart. Have you answered this question before? How is it similar to or different from other essays that, other prompts for other essays you've written? So as far as structure, doesn't matter. Structure in our process, structure emerges during the drafting process. And it's very freeing for students. The only thing that we try to get them not to do is to tie it all up with a bow at the end. We say that's a waste of words. You don't have to say, in conclusion, here's what you've learned.
I learned this.
But for some kids, it's like a security blanket and they need it. But we have found That's why we like the anchor story. So we tell students, your essay might be all this story. It's possible. I don't know. This might be context for something larger you want to say. This might end up being an example among many. I don't know, but we've done hundreds, thousands of students by now. Any student can start this way. The development from step 6 through 10 is where they all veer off in different directions. If I can get them started confidently, most students will finish confidently.
I love that. I'm wondering if you could share with us a story of, I mean, maybe a typical is probably a terrible word, but a student who struggled at the beginning and then sort of just show us how working with the WOW method helped them, become at ease and communicate what they wanted to the schools.
I can tell you the story. One of my favorite stories. I will have to find a new story because I tell this one a lot, but I love the story so much. I was working with a student, a regular smart kid who had been told all his life that he was not a good writer. He had some learning challenges, but he made it through high school okay and decent grades. And he came to us, and when I looked at his, and this was my student, and when I looked at his 4 ideas, we did step 1, he finished, understand the prompt, he got the answers right, he read the stuff, he knew what he didn't say it needed to be unique. Step 2, 4 ideas. And for each idea, we asked them to give us an anchor story, the time I did X, whatever, the day I did Y, at least one characteristic, this shows that I am resilient, a problem solver, or whatever. A little bit of detail on the story, just a couple of sentences, and which prompt are you answering? Which of the 6 options does this respond to? So that we can focus. He brought 3 ideas. He only had 3, not 4, just fine. And they were very impressive. Now, this is a student I knew a little bit. Often we don't know our students at all. I knew him a little bit. And I thought, wow, these are amazing experiences. I had no idea. Idea number 1. I was lobbying Congress, with my mother on an issue related to education. Oh, well, amazing.
Oh.
Idea number 2, equally, volunteering at a food pantry, whatever, pretty impressive ideas for a kid who, was just a regular kid. No problem with that, but he didn't strike me as the kid, the go-getter, exceptional, extraordinary, I'm going to do every single thing in the world. He liked to read. He liked to hang out with his friends. He was a nice boy. So we start talking. Idea number 1 happened when he was in elementary school. Okay, but I can start anywhere. I am curious and willing to be surprised. So I said, so you really are interested in politics then? No, not really. Oh, so have you ever done anything like this again? It sounds like you and your mom went on Capitol Hill when you were, pretty young. No, it was a really cool day. It's one of my favorite stories. Great. I'm thinking there's got to be something, right? What's it? Nothing. How did you come up with this? Oh, my mom thought it was a really good idea. I'm like, got it.
Yeah.
So we're going through idea by idea. And what it was these were the family's best stories about him, because that's what a lot of kids think. Parents think I remember things about you that you don't even know about yourself. So again, I didn't shut him down. I didn't tell him no. I said, let's go back to step 1. You understand the prompt. You answered all my questions. You got an A+ on step 1. I said, let's go back. You say in your characteristics, what do you want readers to know? It says here that you want them to know that you're really curious about people. This is something that you're proud of about yourself. I said, and this is my phrase always, I give this to everyone freely. Tell me about a time when you were curious about someone. That he lit up and he said, oh, I know. See, because he had not connected steps 1 and 2. He had done step 1 and then he did step 2. He thought of them as completely separate. I said, okay, tell me about a time when you were curious. He says, I know, last week, driver's ed. And he starts talking about how he had a new teacher and it was his last driving day and something had happened, something controversial had happened in the news. And he asked the guy, what do you think about, I don't even remember what the issue was. And the driver's ed teacher says something which was completely opposite what my student believes. And he says, it was amazing. I was so curious to know why he thought that. And then I told him what I think. And he listened to me. He's and this was an old guy. He's older than my parents. And he gets really animated and excited about the story. I said, he looks at me, he's like, oh, That's it, right? And I said, that's it. That's who you are. That's what they want. Now, if I had said to him, tell me about the 7 things you did last week, he might have listed driver's ed, but we never would have gotten anywhere with it. He needed to understand what the task was. And as soon as he got it, clicked 100%. He got through the whole process. He was really excited. Like I said, people had told him he couldn't write, whatever. I mean, it was basic, simple sentence, simple sentence, simple sentence. It didn't matter. It was a good essay for the schools he was applying to. He had a good list. And that's what I tell all of my, professional colleagues. And like, what matters most is that they have a good list. A good list, the essays can support where they want to go because they're qualified to go there. If they don't have a good list, the essay is not going to vault them over a wall. So that's my favorite story of a student who really got it and then was able to confidently follow my instructions to do all the exploration and the revision. And he was done in a few weeks.
I love that. You can see it in their eyes.
You can. You always see when they kind of light up. Yeah.
Even on Zoom, and you can see, they might be talking about winning the national debate championship, but they're sort of dead in the face.
Yeah.
And then they'll talk about spending the day in a bookstore, and you just see them light up, and you're like, okay, I can tell what you want to talk about, even though you don't think that's nearly as important as winning the national debate championship. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so helpful to hear you walk through that story because, right, this idea that students have in their head, whether it comes from them, whether it comes from their friends, whether it comes from their parents, like this idea to be impressive. And right, these are the stories that they're hearing over and over that, of course, that's what's going to come out. And they go to that thing that happened when they were 5, when they won that first thing, or this amazing day in DC. And also to like connect with impressive. I was a former English teacher here too. And I have so many students who write these beautiful essays. And it pains me to be like, yes, this is a beautiful piece of writing. But again, like, what are we learning about you here? But I guess what I wanted to ask is, to that point, so many students and parents, they think that this essay needs to be impressive. So how do you help them change that mindset like you did with this student?
So when we talk to parents, we tell them that they're going to do something. In fact, we wrote a book. The second edition is out. It's been out for a few years, but when we first wrote it, my partner's sister was getting her first child ready for college. Now he's like 30. I mean, he's well beyond all of this. But at the time she said to Kim, so what should I do? And Kim said, stay out of it. It's not yours. It belongs to him. And she looked at her sister and said, I'm going to do something. You better give me a job, which really changed our mindset. Like, don't push everybody away, bring them in. So what do we do to give parents a job? We tell them, your students' best characteristics, not their best stories. That's not for you to decide. I want you to help them see what makes them who they are, not what they've done, not where they've gone. And when I tell that to parents, they relax. And I say, and that's it. That's your job, is to ask them, what are some of your best traits? And if you really want to go to the next step, tell me about a time when you exhibited that trait, but your kid probably doesn't want to talk about that with you. So, it's okay. The other thing I say is that it's really hard to revise yourself out of a poorly conceived idea. So don't tell your child, I want you to get that essay done, by 5 o'clock, or you've been working on that for 3 weeks, just finish it up. A blank page is really, really stressful for a lot of students. So what a parent can do is help them come up with that theme. What do you want to write about and why? And let's make sure it answers one of those 6 prompts. A student who's going to a school that requires a college essay, any school that, even if it's just the Common App and you have to write the essay because otherwise the application isn't complete and it's not a big deal. A student who's going to a school that requires an essay should have the writing skills required by that school. So it's not the parent's job to be an editor. So we tell parents up front, help them understand their best characteristics. If you want, help them match up a story and a prompt. And then later when they want you to read it, ask them, what were you trying to communicate here? I'm going to tell you if you've communicated it. Don't change words, don't move paragraphs, don't suggest a different topic. I just had a mom recently who sent us an essay Her son had talked to me, had done some brainstorming, hadn't gone through a whole process, but he got it. He wrote his draft. And the mom said, we've done some revision, but I'd really like you to look at it again. I said, okay, I'll do a review. So she sent me, it was very interesting. She knew, she sent 3 drafts, his original, which sounded like it was written by a 17-year-old boy, and 2 revisions. And the revisions had a few more bits of content which were relevant. But boy, did they sound like they were written by a 40 or 50-year-old mom.
They can tell if it's a parent that wrote it or a kid.
Yeah, so she thought her job really was to elevate what he'd done. And I said, no, your job is to do what you did, which was, it looks like she had asked him some questions. Tell me more about this, tell me more about that. So parents can help find whatever it is that the student can write about in their best characteristics and review to make sure that the student conveyed what they wanted to convey, but not to edit.
Yeah, I hope everyone's taking that in, parents. Wink, wink. But so that's some really helpful advice of ways that parents can help. Anything else besides like don't write, your kid's essay?
Don't write your kid's essay.
That's unhelpful things that parents keep doing.
Well, one helpful thing they can do. So when our students are just about done, we have a lot of templated emails we use. We personalize them, but the core of them is like every single parent needs this message. And one of them, the ones we send near the end is, here is how to read your child's essay. Step away from the computer, put your pen down. If you can print it and go sit somewhere else and think before you comment. First of all, this is like a teacher thing too. First, a positive comment. Anything. I can imagine you in the scene. Oh my gosh, it's so exciting that you're done. That's a beautiful sentence. It doesn't matter. Something positive. And then think about where the essay, how it has improved if you've seen other drafts. And think about what it might look like after they graduate from college, your dream of this beautifully polished essay. And then put that dream of the beautifully polished essay away. And think about what you already know about your child and how they write and how they think. And remember that this is a thinking task as much as it is a writing task. And tell them what works. And if there's something missing, ask them some questions. This is sort of what I said before, but it's a mindset for parents. Parents are worried the essay is the last thing. Like maybe they're going to take the ACT again. They're going to get their grades, of course, for senior year. But as far as the application, most of the application, it's all done. So parents put a lot of weight on this. And so I think that if we found that if we lower the stakes and lower the heat, we actually get better results from parents and students. Parents are afraid they missed something. So they pile on and we say, no, your job is to observe, to reflect, to help your child reflect, and then tell them they did a good job and go do something else.
Right. And it's really hard for some parents to do that, I should say. I don't want to make these gross generalizations, but we always ask the parents, we give them 4 questions. It's our joke is the 4 questions, which we actually got from, I believe it was from a tough submissions person, but is like, does it answer these 4 questions, which are, what are you thinking about? How do you solve problems? How do you play with other people? How do you interact with other people, and kind of what motivates you? And if it answers those questions, then the essay has done its job. And if it doesn't answer those questions, then show them where it doesn't answer the question. And then it either needs to be answered in a supplement or somewhere else, because that's ultimately what they're trying to understand about, those themes. And, we don't have your 10 steps, but we do, very similar. All of those things come together when we do it. But I think that, there's a lot of people that don't have the benefit of working with you or with somebody, someone in some of our essay specialists. And a lot of times people feel, I think what people always say is that they feel, like you said, that blank piece of paper. They feel very overwhelmed with that process. And they're also getting feedback from their parents. They're getting feedback from their friends. They're getting feedback from 50 essays that got me into Harvard. And they're all trying to write in a way that maybe isn't even in their capabilities to do it, right? But they feel this intense pressure to write this amazing essay. And so what would you say to that student? I know you've talked a little bit about it, but who just feels really overwhelmed, doesn't really know where to start, how to start. They've read the prompt, they understand the prompt, but then what do they do next?
So I tell them not to try to write a full draft. I want them to focus on theme first. So I want them to like forget essay. Essay is, you're going to be done with your essay later. I say, think about theme. What are you going to write about and why? Don't worry about how you're going to convey it. Don't worry about if you really do understand the prompt. It doesn't say you need to be unique. It doesn't say you need to be outrageously special. Like normal kids get to go to college. Normal kids graduate from college. Most adults, are regular people who went to regular schools. But it's hard to, that's hard to absorb at that time.
It is hard to absorb.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we say start small. So the smallest thing you can do is have a theme. What are you going to write about and why? And we say, you know what? Don't worry about it. If you hate the essay when you're done, you'll try again. Momentum is your friend. Keep moving. Don't stop and say, well, maybe I have a better idea. And maybe talk about it with someone and not someone who's got high expectations.
Right.
Like find your most down-to-earth friend.
Right.
And just have a conversation if you can. Theme. Then this is our step 4 is to free write for details. And that's just the what happened part of the theme. What's the story you want to tell? Bring me into the room, bring me onto the soccer field, bring me into the minivan, whatever. Just give me a little bit of what happened. So you can just write. And it's not a first draft. It's just stuff.
It's just stuff, right?
Now go back and read the question again, read the prompt again, and highlight the parts that you're really responding to. Because those 6 prompts, they're packed full.
Yeah, there's a lot of information.
There's so much in them. You may not be describing a background and an interest and a, and a da-da-da-da. Or, whatever. If you're talking about a time that you challenged something, make sure that you explain what the significance was. But go back to the prompt again. Keep going back to the prompt and the theme, prompt and theme, prompt and theme. What happens is once students start writing, they can get lost and they start just describing stuff or going off on tangents. That's okay. But if then they write their draft and maybe it's 400 words and maybe it's 900 words. It doesn't matter. Go back to the prompt, go back to your theme, and then ask this question either of yourself or ask someone else to reflect with you. What's missing? Don't tell me to pick a different topic. Don't tell me you don't like the first line. This is all content. So what I'm telling them, if they're working on their own, is focus on content first. Because finished essays, it's like picking up a novel and saying, oh, I have to start with a clever first paragraph. That was probably in like the 7th draft.
And they don't realize the editing process, the revising process, right? They don't understand that. Right.
There's a character who doesn't even exist anymore in the story. So what they're trying to do is like make this thing. And that's not how you make that thing. So if they focus on content first, what generally happens is their voice comes through because they're not worried so much about being impressive and, writing the perfect essay. And there will be obvious holes and someone else can help them find those holes. And then they move into structure and polish, and that's the writing and revising. But focus on content first is my biggest tip. And on our website, we have a link to the free version of our book. It's a free ebook. I mean, they can read the book and follow the instructions.
All right. Well, we'll put that on our website as well. And that's such good advice. And I think the other thing that kids always get caught up in is like, how long should it be? They ask me that all the time. How long? I'm like, it doesn't matter. Just write. I'd rather have more than less. And I always tell kids, I'm like, I want you to write me a really bad first draft. And then that kind of takes the pressure off them because they have this idea that it's got to be really good. I'm like, nope. I expect it to be really bad, and that's fine.
Yes.
I just want to see what you're writing. I just want to see where you're going, and then we'll find things from there. I was just with a student yesterday, and she had written. We came up with 2 possible ideas, and she had written both of the ideas in the same essay, and she was having a really hard connecting it. And I was like, interesting. Like, I thought we were going this way. She said, I just kind of wrote everything and I didn't know how to connect it. I said, well, that's because they were 2 completely different themes. And so that makes sense that you didn't know how to connect it. So let's just pull out the part that is what you want, that you want to talk about. And she's like, oh, this is so much easier. This is so much better. So it's kind of fun.
Absolutely. Sometimes the simplest is the best.
Yeah.
That's been my experience so many times.
Almost always.
Yes.
Almost always. I mean, but that's such a hard message to deliver because they come in wanting to be impressive. I did an essay brainstorming with a client the other day, and I think he said the word hook 6 times. What's my hook? And I was like, you've just been reading too much on the interwebs. We're not starting with a hook. We have a long way to go before we find a hook. Please. It's out there. They all want that clever, but yeah, I think your advice is really good. We need the content before we figure out the structure or the hook, the conclusion. I think you had touched on this a little bit earlier, but in terms of supplemental essays, how do you apply your process to the supplements? Do those have themes also? They're a little bit different in
Right.
the nature of them, but how do you approach that?
So we think of supplements as a package. So what we do when we finish the Common App personal statement. If we have students who are applying in California, we then go on to the UC personal insight questions, because we can then it helps us emphasize that message about understanding the prompt, because the prompts are different. Purpose is slightly different. The way the essays work together is different. They're not just shorter. It's a different kind of thing, and they work together really well. I mean, UC says these are 4 questions that work together. So we'll do that. But then when we move into supplementals, and for students who aren't applying to the UCs, we skip that, move straight into supplemental essays. We look at them as a package. So for a school that has a couple of essays, I'm located in Michigan. So we work with students all over the world, but we happen to have a lot of students who either know we're in Michigan, so assume we're U of M experts, or, are local. And we are U of M experts, so that's good. But we'll look at the 2 questions together. So this year they changed one of their questions. It's like almost the same, but not exactly. So what we do is
the same.
so close.
So close.
Yeah. But not quite.
Come on.
So, come on, guys. What was wrong with the community question? I liked it.
I liked it too.
But we look at those. Well, that's a good example where there's a why us question. Why are you interested in this program or school or whatever? The units that this giant university you're applying. Are you applying to literature, science, and arts? Are you applying to engineering? Are you applying to kinesiology? Are you applying to the art school? So knowing in that large area, and then squeezing down into like, well, which programs are you interested in, and what kind of living learning community might you be interested in? It's not in the prompt, but we do step 1, understand the prompt. What are they asking? It doesn't say what do you want to major in exactly, but it says you can consider that. So if you know what you want to major in, you might want to mention that. So we're really getting granular there. And then we go to the second essay and we say, okay, what's this question asking? What's in here? What do they want to know? Why would they ask this? And how would these questions go together? Because we say these essays, along with your Common App personal statement, now we're looking at the larger application and your activities and all of your classes and all the things you've done. Those are now going to tell a story about you together. So the next question is, so once we make sure they really understand the prompt, and maybe this is the first group of supplements they're writing. Maybe it's the 3rd group of supplements. In that case, one of the questions is, how is this prompt similar to or different from other ones you've written that might seem kind of like the same? Then we want to look at them strategically, and we say, okay, what else do you want them to know about you from your Common App personal statement? Here's what they learned. What else do you want them to know? Now, for a why us essay, we call it, the dating essay. What do I know about you? What do I know about me? What stories can I tell you that show that we really go together? I like movies. You like movies. Oh, you like horror films and I like indies. Maybe we can't go to the movies together. So we try to get, as specific as possible. That in our language is the theme again. What am I going to include and why? And we want them to look at, unless there's like 6 supplements, it's too much to keep in your head all at the same time. If there's only 2 or 3, we try to do that in one discussion. They don't have to write them all at once, but just to understand that these are not individual pieces that stand alone. So that theme is, what am I going to write about and why? We don't want them to just sit down, read a prompt, and send us a draft. Because like I said before, it's hard to revise your way out of a poorly conceived idea. We want them at least to have a concept and a purpose before they start.
Yeah, I love that. So it kind of pains me to bring up the next topic, and I know I have to embrace AI and the role it's playing in our world and all the positives. But at this point, it's hard, to talk about essays without bringing up LLMs, large language models, ChatGPT. So in your opinion, what is lost in the essay writing process for kids when they use this sort of technology?
So I think what we're seeing right now, and I pay attention to all of the AI essay tools. I could name them for you. I could tell you what they do. I could tell you how much they cost, if they're free or there's a charge for them. Here's what I see. Low-hanging fruit are the two things I tell my colleagues not to do and have been telling my colleagues not to do for 15 years, which is one, telling a student what to write, and two, editing their essay. The only things I have seen LLMs do and in their wrappers of whatever online, so whether you just go to ChatGPT and say, I want them to know that I'm a good problem solver and I want to write about the day I went fishing with my dad, and says, write me an essay, or using one of the current tools. I mean, it can sound like sour grapes, right? They're my competitors, but the low-hanging fruit are those two things. You can put a lot of data into whatever model you want, and it'll spit out ideas. It'll give you, you could write about this, 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 and this. Tell me your best values, your 6 most important experiences, and 3 ways you like to spend your time on the weekend, and your 4 best characteristics. And it'll give you ideas. It'll tell you what to write. What I try to teach my colleagues, and I've found that this is what really opens up our process for counselors and independent consultants, is telling them it's not your job to mine for gold. It's your job to teach students how to think about the essay, which will help them, like my student with his driver's ed story, find a story that will be effective, because effective is your friend. Spectacular is not your goal. I mean, it would be nice if it's like the best essay you've ever written, and every year we have one. I think we had ours already. It was amazing. But for most students, they kind of miss the point. So that's the first thing that an LLM in its current version, people will come up with new things. I'm sure this is just the first generation. The next thing it can do is put my essay in and tell me how to make it better, which is the same as taking the essay and handing it to a person and saying, is this good? If the model could say, from our discussion, you mentioned X, Y, and Z, and that doesn't seem to be here. I think you need to write more about it. I'd be more impressed. But if all it can do is say, you might want to, add to this or include another example, or have you had these kinds of experiences? It's not taking into account the student who wrote it. It's treating the essay as an object. And there are people who do this, right? You can take your essay and you can give it to a company or to an essay reader and say, make it better. So I am trying to be open-minded. I am curious about this. I think there will be ways that AI will be useful in the essay world. I think about it. Maybe I'll make it. I don't know. But what we have so far feels like a solution in search of a problem. And I don't think that it's the right solution. I just think it does the thing that people shouldn't do. It just does it faster because computation is fast.
But I also feel like so much of the writing process, there's a process that goes through of self-reflection, of understanding what drives you, making these connections that you wouldn't have otherwise. And I think that's going to be really hard to do with an LLM, because you're not having that time to sort of take a step back, wrestle with the ideas, figure out what's missing. And as good as they get, I don't know that they're going to ever do that for a person. A person has to, it's almost like sending an LLM to therapy and saying, okay, go to therapy.
Go do that. Eventually, there'll be something, but I don't
There
know
will
if it's
be.
going to
Yeah,
be in
I'm
6
sure there will
months
be.
or 6 years.
Well, there is a program, I haven't looked at it. I don't know if you have, Susan, but there is a program that they've been marketing to IECs that will do their editing. And then it's a little bit nefarious because they'll do the editing, but then you're not supposed to tell the clients, and you could decide if you want to include it or not. So I haven't explored it because it's not something that we're interested in doing, but it is out there. What are some other, we always like to end with like myths and truths about college essays. So, I mean, I'll start with one truth, which I think you touched on a little bit, but that the supplements are actually in many schools the more important essays than the personal statement. So that's one truth that I think we've heard a lot. What are some other myths and truths that you have seen?
Another truth is you will be impressive if you answer the question. I don't know how many admissions people have said to me, tell your kids if they really want to stand out, they should answer the question because most people don't, which is always, it doesn't surprise me anymore, but I think it's really true. So that's the truth. Just answer the question. They ask those questions for a reason and they actually want your answer. A myth is that admissions readers, that they don't read them. Now, I know that they go through applications quickly, but they do read them. Someone will read them. Another myth is that colleges are looking for specific characteristics. Like you need to build a profile that shows you are these 4 things. And that's not true. They want positive characteristics. I mean, don't tell them how angry you are at the world. Another myth is that you shouldn't write about fill in the blank, sports, religion, race, mental health, service trips. Like there's all these myths. The reason those are there is that the truth is they're usually handled poorly because the essay doesn't have a why. There's no, why are you telling me about winning the soccer tournament? Well, because it was so amazing. I had broken my leg and then I came back and I say, okay, you broke your leg, you came back and you won. What if you hadn't won? Would it still be a good story? If the answer is yes, then we can find a story there. Like, what did you do while you had a broken leg? If the story is no and it's only about winning, it's a really cool story and that's amazing and I'm proud of you, but it's not a college essay. So it's not that you can't write about certain things. It's that if you're going to write about anything, no matter what, you should know why you've chosen that topic.
Yeah, that's such good advice. And people always say that, oh, you can't write about all these things. I'm like, well, the topic isn't the issue. It's just how you write about it and why you're telling it. You kind of remind me of my marketing professor in business school, because whenever we would have to present a case, you'd go through all the data and you'd be so nervous presenting the case. And she'd be like, and so what is the point? Like, why are you telling us this data? So it's kind of that same idea. So whenever I hear someone say why, and that kind of stays with me whenever I'm looking at anything. It's like, why is it important? What is the point? Any last minute tips that you want to share with our listeners?
My last tip for students is you've already done the hard things. You are good enough. Your writing skills are good enough. You don't have to turn yourself into something that you're not. When I do presentations to students, I always end with trust yourself. And I really think that's important. Students trust yourself, and parents trust your students. And that's huge. Trust them.
And I think that's actually such a good point to underscore, because the worst thing that can happen is when a student is, and we've had this happen, when a student's super excited about their essay, they feel really good about it. They've worked really hard, they're super happy, they feel like it reflects who they are, and then they give it to either a parent or maybe they give it to sometimes someone else, an outside person, and that person just destroys it. And then they start to second guess themselves and they start to feel, like you said, that they're not good enough and that it's not a good essay. And we get so heartbroken when that happens, because then the parent will go or someone will write it. And I'm like, or their friend or cousin at Stanford will go and edit the essay. And I said, okay, well, this is different. It's written differently, but it's not better. It hasn't changed anything. It's a different voice, it's a different essay, but it's not a better essay than the one that you were so happy about. So trust yourself. You are good enough, and that's a really, really good message to give out to our listeners.
I like students to know that your story told in your voice and in your words is what your readers are looking for.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah. So great. Such great advice. Well, thank you, CDMers, for tuning in. Thank you, Susan, for wowing us with your great essay advice. We'll have a link to your free download on our site. To catch more episodes of College Bound Mentor, make sure to follow or subscribe. And if you do like it, please give us a review, because that helps with the rankings. Tell a fellow parent or student about the podcast. To learn more, visit collegeeboundmentor.com. Until next time, you got this.